So welcome back to another Seek a Strength review. Today we're talking about something that a lot of people have heard about. It's very, very popular in the media at the moment. It's not something that we can specialize in ourselves as coaches. So it's Bryson Dechambeau's monstrous driving length and club head speed. What we're going to do today is just chat as S&C coaches about some of the changes that have come around in the past kind of year, some of the things that he's said to be focusing on, and then for kind of people who are watching the video who might want to make some of these changes in their own training, things you'd want to look at implementing, and kind of different strategies for gaining muscle, gaining power, and gaining like kind of speed in your hip rotation.
Okay, I just want to point out here, right, that I have absolutely zero interest in golf. I don't like playing golf. I don't like watching golf. I know nothing about golf, but I know some performance enhanced stats when I see them, and these stats are fucking hilarious. He is 110 kilos, or just shy of 110 kilos, and he's playing golf. Why is he 110 kilos? He has what we have up on the screen at the moment is his stats from 2017 to 2020. So in 2017, assuming he's an elite golfer, and then in 2017 to 2020, he just improved most of his performance by at least 15%, which is at the elite level is astronomical in any sport.
Yeah, like if you just looked at the gain in body weight, like just body mass, without knowing anything, if it's like lean tissue mass, just that amount of weight gain in like basically 2 seasons is phenomenal. Like the effort that man must have gone to gain that much mass. So going like a gain of like, what is it, 45 pounds?
Yeah.
Is absolutely mental. And
all in his ass as well.
So in in baseball in the States, right, there's a term in S&C in baseball about having a high ass. Like you'll hear it in like when they talk about rugby players here that they're like high hipped. So they just have a huge ass that protrudes kind of from like halfway down their back. And when you look at like any pictures of Bryson, that's where the speed is coming from. Interestingly enough, right, when we go on and we look at some of the videos later on, and he talks about where he feels his power comes from, he feels like his power comes from his lats, which, like, lats aren't a prime mover in any sense of the word. Like, they will adduct the arm into the side of the body. So in terms of the swing and like keeping the swing consistent, they're probably very, very active. But when you look at the speed, that speed is coming from the size of his ass.
He got a dump truck. If you look at the line of his belt in 2017, that picture, it's perfectly parallel with the ground.
Yeah.
And if you look at it in 2020, he's at an angle, like there's an incline there. His dump truck is backing up.
Yeah.
Like if you look at every one of his stats improved, and I think it's no coincidence that all of his power stats improved with an increase in lean mass. Like there is just no doubt about that. Like that is undeniable.
Yeah.
For any of our golf fans who are not S&C aficionados or any way involved in, gym work or strength conditioning or sports, like it makes perfect sense that like he's not moving, he's putting power into something else to send it moving, it's putting velocity into something else. So it makes perfect sense that all of his like power indicators or performance indicators gone up. So he's like longest drive, like relative is 6 yards, a lot to increase in elite level. Like is that
that is very significant.
Average ball speed is significantly increased, club head speed is significantly increased, like as percentages of those. And then so average distance massively increased as well. Even average accuracy, I think that's very interesting, went up by like 2 point something percent, which could easily be the difference between winning an entire game of golf or match or whatever you call it.
I think the stat here, so body weight obviously, right, is fucking huge. That's going to make a gigantic difference. It's very, very significant. You don't often see athletes making this magnitude of a change, right? Obviously, we
110 though.
110 kilos.
That's obnoxious huge, for a golfer.
But you've seen like so other really high level golfers have done this, right? So Tiger Woods did this. He gained body size, gained club head speed. Rory McIlroy did it. Loads of pros have done it at some stage in their career.
Yeah, but
But
they all get it. They turn into chunksters, like they're chunky cats when they do that. Like,
yeah, but this guy looks like he can throw a hammer in the Olympics for some Eastern
yeah,
European country. Uh, but the strokes gained off the tee, right? So that's you're basically cutting back shots by how far you're able to hit the ball and how accurately you're able to hit the ball from the tee. Like this is the telling one. So it's like 0.42 strokes gained off the tee in 2017, 1 point like over one stroke gained off the tee on average in 2020, which is gigantic. And it's obviously showing that like not only is he a lot more powerful, but he's also a lot more consistent and able to hit fairways, able to hit the ball straight, and not kind of
I,
be
I
veering off course.
I would imagine that is from, he has better muscular endurance. He's less fatigued by consecutive shots. Like he's probably, you know, his ability to concentrate would be interplayed with all of his like hormone systems, and having better muscle mass would probably help, maybe not stabilize those, but would put them on a more favorable path in terms of, fatigue, especially. So if you just look at like amount of muscle mass and amount of shots taken, like he has more muscle mass to take more shots in one session, if you want to break it down like that, or more potential energy to store glycogen if he's more muscle mass. So like your muscles would act like glycogen wells, so he has an ability to have better shots in a short, or like in the same time frame, more consistent, more quality shots as such in
Yeah,
theory.
and I think like when you hear so Bryson is like referred to as the scientist in like golfing circles. And when you look at like why they call him the scientist, he's obviously has this whole thing with clubs and biomechanics and all his clubs are the same length and very, very stiff shafts. So he's super pernickety about consistency and removing all the variables, right? In terms of his swing itself, though, when you look at how consistent his swing is, having more muscle mass allows him to take more shots per session. It allows him to put less energy into every shot relatively within a session. And if you're looking at any sport, whether that be um, javelin, hammer throwing, weight like Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, golfing, anything like that, where it's just a discrete movement. It's a once off power exertion and then possibly repeated bouts with rests in between. Him being able to practice more effectively and getting better quality practice in, like having more muscle mass will really help with that. Right. So that's the crazy stats out of the way, right? What we're going to look at now is Bryson talking about his transformation. And I think, like, when you see how jacked he is in this picture, you'll get an idea for this isn't just your average golfer. So he's carrying an awful lot of muscle mass above his center mass. When he talk about his swing and where he feels like a swing from, we've mentioned he talks about his lats earlier. So obviously he's incredibly wide across the back. Um, and it's more like when he's really allowing himself to pull hard on a golf club, that is coming from that like upper body musculature. The aggressive hip opening and rotation around the hip is obviously coming from glutes and quads. Uh, but in order to actually be able to pull and hold on to the golf club as that hip rotation is happening, he holds a lot of body mass above his center mass.
Yeah, like, and he's not in that picture we're looking at there. Obviously, it's favorable lighting, but he's not exactly, he didn't. He's soft, but he's not realistically, he's not a power performance athlete. He's not looking for, like, he's playing golf at the end of the day, but like the quality of what muscle he has there is reasonably significant if you compare him to other golfers. Like he is pretty lean. Like the mass he gained is obviously a lot of muscle mass. Like it's a lot of lean tissue. It's significant. Like he, like, for want of a better word, has almost as abs there. He's like probably
Yeah,
somewhere in the region of 15 to 18% body fat, probably.
yeah. So I think what you have in Bryson is like you have somebody now who's primed to sell a huge amount of protein powder, sell a huge amount of expensive gym equipment, and be an incredible marketing tool for whatever golf club he holds in his hand. Uh, but you do need to look at like the decisions. I think what's more important than anything else is like the decisions Bryson has made or his coaching staff have made that will allow him to do this, right? Uh, so we see with athletes all the time that they're afraid to gain size or they're afraid to gain mass, or you'll hear coaches talking about athletes being muscle bound, which is like a hilarious term when you look at it in reality, right? So more muscle allows you to move yourself easier. It allows you to do more repeated bouts. Having more muscle will allow you to possibly have more speed once you train correctly. Uh, and it is kind of really going against the old school of like you want people to be, in order to have max club head speed or to have the maximum amount of speed in a kick, that they're thinking about being like slender and thin and light. Whereas in reality, when you look at the really, really fast athletes who are producing the most amount of power, they do hold quite a lot of body mass.
Yeah, but judging from what I've seen the last few days in the golf community around him, there's been some heavy allegations, and I don't know if we're allowed to say them. We probably won't, but you can, there's implications.
Yeah.
In terms of like, so he gained like an average of 15 to 20% on his stats, right? And that is, a significant. There's some implications there. Now we won't say what the implications are, but there's been some accusations in the golfing community, judging by all of the comments on any of the videos or any of his Instagram posts.
Yeah.
Now we're not judging them, but people are.
I think it's undeniable, right, that there's something going on here. Like we have to kind of mention it because it's the elephant in the room. It's something that's synonymous with his name being mentioned. Like when you look at Team Sky in cycling, who's had huge amounts of doping allegations, or like they've been caught a few times. Team Sky were looking for a 1.5% increase on power output, and it was once they got the 1.5% increase on power output in their athletes, so people are like, oh, they must be doing something illegal or away from norms or doping, right? I think to a certain extent we can't collate these two things, right? So a 20% increase or a 10% increase in golf isn't the same as a 1 or 2% increase in cycling, because cycling traditionally has always been very, very stat driven. It's always been very, very scientific in the way it will look at power outputs. It will always test everything constantly. In terms of the golfing community, and this isn't a shot at anyone, but in terms of golfing S&C, there hasn't been a huge amount of anything to do with basically like taking scientific data has only come in since the early 2000s. So I think we could be
like, if you look at his physique, like it's not even remotely near the top end of like pro athletes who are natural.
no.
I mean, it's not even. He looks like he goes to the gym sometimes. He doesn't look like he's a professional athlete, natural or not. It's not even like, I think people, the viewership as well in the golfing community are so unused to seeing what a gym looks like and what athletes who go fucking take it seriously in their S&C, it does look like it's hard to like comprehend when you have no like reference point. Basically, when you have 40-50-year-old men who are playing golf and who definitely don't go to the gym. So then when you have a younger athlete, so he's like 27 and he gained, probably didn't take his S&C that seriously before this, and then maybe in the last year, or maybe he just maintained his weight and did his usual exercises, right? But then he decided in 1 year he was like, I'm going to gain a certain amount of weight. That is so within the realms of achieving, possibly, if you make an effort and you're a professional athlete and you have the time and the ability to hire reasonable nutritionist, someone who knows even a little bit about it, and is trained consistently a couple of days a week to gain a couple of kilos of muscle mass. Like, it's not even remotely impossible like that. He couldn't have done this totally naturally as well.
And that is, so I think there's loads of people looking to like play like Bryson now, right? They're looking to, like, including myself, I'm interested in having all the clubs the same length. There's loads of people are kind of like jumping on that bandwagon, and people think that this is like in some way unattainable. Like, I'd go so far as to say if you went into any senior rugby changing room, you'll probably find 5 people with a physique like Bryson within the first 2 clubs you go to, right?
If you showed me him and you never told me anybody, you just said, look at this guy, you'd be like, think he's on gear? You'd be absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No, you wouldn't think he's a doped athlete in any way. I think people see the percentage increase and they say, like, oh, anytime you have that increase in elite sport, it has to be something to do with that. Like, by all means, right? Bryson could be popping down about all day long, and he just might
why
not
wouldn't
be
he, for
getting
the money
tested.
he's fucking earning?
Yeah. But it's definitely not out of the realms of possibility that somebody could do this
Yeah.
100% naturally in the same time frame. So we're going to look at some videos of Bryson training now, right? And this is where we would do things differently. So if we had an athlete, uh, we'd be using different movements. We'd probably be using different tests, and we just train them slightly differently. Like, this is obviously working for him. He's won the US Open just a few months ago. He's one of the top ranked golfers in the world. We're the last people to rag on his S&C work. But the other thing is, like, the reason there's kind of the mystique around it is because nobody really knows what he does. He's sponsored by a gym equipment company, so Prime, and you'll see a video of him using Prime equipment, which is a cable lifting machine. So it's like a multi-gym you'd see in your own gym or in a home gym. It has some differences to it because it can be like accommodative resistance, or it can have like different kind of loading patterns at different stages in the range of motion. But Bryson's just doing very, very simple training. There's absolutely nothing complicated here. The first video we're going to look at is a video of him with his physiotherapist. I'm not sure if this guy's a physiotherapist or not. But what you see is like Bryson swinging the club in the practice. There's nothing magical here. And then you see tests for force output, right? So these tests are like by no means revolutionary. What you'll see in most kind of professional physiotherapy environments, if you're dealing with high level athletes, when they're doing these tests, they'll just do it by feel. So you'll see Bryson is like pushing here, so he's engaging his lats and trying to adduct his arm, and the therapist is working on him, right? So this is a therapist, he works with a lot, or seems to work with a lot. This is just a very, very basic force test. And I think what this training system is called, if I just read it here, muscle activation techniques, or MAT, muscle activation, techniques. So this coach is Greg Roskopf, I think is how you pronounce it. And they're basically working on range of motion here, Gerf. Like, isn't it? When we look at the training sessions later on, he tests where he's strong and where he's weak and where there's imbalances. He goes and like activates the muscle tissue and gets an extra bit of range of motion in certain muscle groups.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like, this isn't anything. So like you see him here, he's on like a pec fly machine. He's doing some banded single arm bench press. So obviously he was weaker on one side. They're probably opening up that side now and activating it. And when they retest it in the gym later on, magically that side will produce more force again.
And like, there's a huge amount of susceptibility, even if you're looking at the measurement tool he's using. So like, it's a free standing, free holding piece of equipment. It's massively subjective to who's pushing against them, what the athlete is doing. Essentially what he's done is just warmed up. Like, he just went and did some exercise and warmed up his shoulders, and that's how he's gotten a better measurement. He didn't magically increase muscle mass or fucking fiber activation. He didn't do any fucking pap on it or any blood flow restriction. He literally just did some exercise with his shoulder, and then he's able to move it through a little range of motion. Like, there's nothing revolutionary about what he's doing and what they're trying to make out of this, you know. Another problem with this, right, is there's a huge assumption that athletes are unilateral and perfectly balanced unilaterally. Like, bilaterally, they're the exact same. There's the exact same force output. And then if there's any kind of imbalance, you're looking for an injury and you're losing performance massively. And it's a massively incorrect assumption. And it's been proven, like, it's been studied by people who are aficionados about biomechanics, right? So if you take, for example, you can see it visually in weightlifters. Like, a lot of times you'll see weightlifters with imbalances, like how they grip the bar, where their feet are facing. Clock off is a famous example where it's very, very obvious, and it's very useful to see that. And then perfectly, the bar ends up level overhead, like with 200 kilos or more, 220 kilos, mass world records. You look at, you know, one grip distance between each other will be different. There'll be different distance between the grip, you know, and the jerk, and then the bar will still end up level overhead, and the athlete won't be injured. You know, it's a very incorrect assumption. Like, they've done studies on it was runners, I think, track runners, and the difference between left stride and right side, I think, was the biggest difference they found was something in the region of like 12 centimeters or something. like stride length in terms of forward of each leg, you know, and that was in a medalist, and that was where it's like that was the maximum, but there was still a range of motion, you know, so like it's incredibly incorrect to assume that you have to be unilateral balanced and that, you know, balancing each side will magically make you better performance and injury free, you know.
Yeah,
It
and
just
like
annoys me
when you
sometimes.
look at a sport, like golf is a very, very like monostructural sport, right? You swing a club. In Bryson's case, he swings a club in the exact same arc every single time, except when he's putting. Like you shouldn't expect everything to be perfectly symmetrical from side to side. Like Gurf is saying, if you always run around an oval track, you'll have differences in stride length. If in a clean and jerk, your left leg goes forward on the jerk, there can be up to 33% difference in the cross sectional area of your quadricep on your left leg because your left leg is supporting more weight than the quad on your right leg, right? And that's a third of a weightlifter sport. So in golf, when you have these kind of all you do is swing a club from one side to the other. Like they might, in their S&C work when they're in the gym, they might be activating the other side. They might be doing anti-rotation work with both sides. But realistically, when they're going on the course or they're on the range, they're just swinging in one plane. They're always moving in one direction. So when you see the kind of power output differences here, right, from Bryson's left side to Bryson's right side before he does his muscle activation technique, he has 32 pounds on the right side, 16 pounds on the left side. So like his left side is probably always pulling like across the body. His right side's always pulling into the body. So when you do something like an adduction test, right side to left side on the shoulders, there's obviously going to be a huge difference. He's just been swinging a golf club, hitting it into a driving mat in the physio practice, right? So the only thing he's warmed up is that single range of motion. The other thing is, we just have to talk about this curve. The title of this YouTube video is absolutely phenomenal. Extended version: Bryson Dechambeau workout gains 93.75% force output in 24 hours. That's clickbaitier than our YouTube titles.
That was just phenomenal levels of just extrapolation from what they were doing.
Yeah,
Like he
yeah, yeah.
warmed up
Like,
in that 24 hours. He warmed up. You know,
yeah.
that's what happened there. He warmed up, literally warmed up.
Like what they're essentially after doing is measuring the speed of somebody walking and then being like, "Oh, do you mind just sprinting there?" And be like, "Holy shit, he just ran 5 times faster."
Yeah.
Okay,
So this is
this is
we're looking
yeah the gym equipment.
like we don't see a whole lot in this video, but basically what we see is just Bryson doing a lot of machine lifts. You know, single joint movements. So he's doing like you know like we see very little in this video. I think there's a little bit in his Instagram. So we saw him doing in his Instagram video. So he's doing like reverse weighted sit-ups, like seated weighted sit-ups, like against resistance.
Yeah,
We see him doing some like cable benching, single arm cable benching in that physio video, and then we see him doing a lot of rotational work like against machines. Like it makes sense to train some rotational work, you know, but like something we always talk about in the gym is that, you know, it's so dumb to try to replicate your sport and try to replicate the movement in your gym. You know, that's not what you're there for. Like you're there for getting better at gym work, you know, and then facilitating your sport. You know, you're not there to. So there's a couple of things, you know, about kind of replicating what you're doing in the gym as your sport. So if you're trying to go into the sport and he weights up a golf club like a heavy, and I'm not saying he's done this, but if he did this, it'd be like the weight of the golf club is incredibly specific, right? And the feeds he's hitting at are very specific to what he's doing, you know, and the movement pattern is very specific, and like the sequencing of his muscle fibers are incredibly specific to that movement. And so when you add any alterations to those, you know, you add a weighted golf club, or you are doing some like rotational work like this against that would match the pattern, for example, of your golf club. What you're doing there is a lot of times you're doing these under fatigue, like so you're adding resistance to it, so it's making it more difficult. So you're doing movement under fatigue, so that you're going to drop the quality. What you're also doing is changing the power output of that, and then you're training yourself to move in that power output range, you know. So there is in sports science what's known as the dynamic body weight hypothesis. So basically it's that for the lower limbs of the body, the maximum power output is done at body mass. So if you're doing weighted jumps, for example, don't work, and we've talked about this before. And so anything like this and kind of like replicating your sport in the gym is, you know, another aspect of that where you're trying to replicate your sport, but in actual fact you're just making yourself slightly worse at your sport. Like you're training almost like a different sport then, and not positively affecting your own sport.
Yeah. I think so. When we talk about like what we would do with golf athletes and what we do with throwing athletes, like the gym work we do is some squats, some deadlifts, power cleans if they can do them, high hand clean pulls from blocks if they can't do power cleans, and then just make them really strong and really, really resistant to any sort of injury. Like then you'd start, or at the same time as that, you'd start looking at range of motion that they can achieve. So ensuring that they're getting the full range of motion of a swing, and they're not tight or getting caught up anywhere, or there's no inhibitory kind of movement patterns. I think an interesting thing here, right, is I've obviously trained a small bit as a weightlifter, done a small bit of powerlifting, but I've lifted weights for a while, and I'm the worst golfer anybody has ever seen swing a club, but I can still achieve club head speeds similar to what Bryson is doing. So I can achieve club head speeds like into the late 120s. Like it's still not as fast as his, but the training he's doing is nothing special. Like there's nothing here that nobody can't go out and do. He's just gotten a lot stronger than other people on tour, and he's gained a bit of muscle mass to help himself do that. Like there's nothing really crazy revolutionary here, right? A lot of the stuff he's doing, the other stuff he's doing around club length, around like consistency of putting, consistency of like where he's striking the ball, that's revolutionary. That's very, very good. But in terms of the gym work and the S&C work, like the gym work here is what you'd see somebody doing in a hotel gym.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's the most basic of basic, which is great. Like that's what you want to see. You don't ever want to see people overcomplicating things.
I would say it would be probably back squats if he was able to do them, and I think it would benefit him an awful lot because he's doing a sport, he's standing upright.
Yeah.
Chin ups, some kind of unilateral exercise, whichever he prefers, whatever he's doing. So you might like lunges, or you might prefer fucking Bulgarian split squats, and then it'd be like back extensions and back extension holds, and then pale off press standing probably, so like anti-rotational work. And then would you add anything?
No, like all of those, like when you see this video here, right, this gives you a good idea of what he'll probably actually be doing on a normal session. So he's doing rotation work and anti-rotation work. He's doing loads of core work and kind of hip opening work. He does some specific lat work, and then he does semi-wide grip pull-ups. Like that's all those gym sessions have to be. As we were saying earlier, he's the dream for a supplement company. Because he's making
like literally all he did was he did some resistance
huge
training.
amounts of money off getting jacked. But that's all these sessions are. You know, there's nothing complicated there. He's probably doing moderate volume, is what I'd be saying. Looking at these, and moderate intensity, which obviously, if there's like if he takes an off season, he might do some really high power output stuff, which would definitely benefit with the speed of hip opening and the speed of hip rotation. But this is all just like maintenance work, moderate volume. He's not going crazy. He's still wearing his baseball cap backwards at the end of the session.
Like he went from someone who probably did very little not even intense, but relative to what he's doing before, gym work, like S&C work. And then he did anything basically. And now compared to his competitor, he has looked like he has just, taken the hottest cycle in the last year and a half,
Yeah.
He did some resistance training. So he's just doing like anything at all, and he has improved his performance.
But he's also done some resistance training with a caloric surplus, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like that's it. If you get any guy in his mid-20s and do this, put him on like a T-Nation program, give him 250 extra calories a day, and he'll achieve this in that 2 or 3 year bracket. Like,
I genuinely don't think he took here, to be honest, but the golf community seems to think he does. But it's it's funny. It would be very interesting to see if the whole like the top 20 golfers or whatever were taken off like fucking the green for a year, and everyone was just went to the gym and see what everyone would come back out like.
Yeah,
just did some kind of like directed S&C work.
Definitely, I'd love to see as well if they did some high end force or high end power work, like heavy throws, heavy pulled, what their spring speed will be.
Yeah.
But
Imagine
yeah,
if he did like not a ridiculous deadlift, a 200 kilo deadlift, or God forbid a 225 kilo deadlift or something, you know?
yeah, like a moderately heavy deadlift
Yeah,
would
like
probably be very,
a
very useful.
a reasonably strong deadlift, like, you know,
Yeah.
it'd be phenomenal to see what would happen to his throwing skills.
So yeah, I hope you liked the video. Like, we can't really deserve to have opinions on it. If you want more information, go to our Instagram. So it's just at Seek Strength on Instagram. If you want some programs, so off-season programs, strength and hypertrophy programs, specific squat, deadlift, pressing programs, go and look at seekstrength.com in the store. If you have questions or if you have opinions on this, by all means, pop them down into the comments. And thanks very much for watching.